Great day. Welcome to the podcast, She Who Believes. I am your host, Vivian Bell, and I am indeed She Who Believes. So I woke up this morning and God said this: Jesus is not, nor has he ever been, broke. And so I said, okay, Lord, talk to me. And he talked to me and he took me back to the place where the Bible talks about the wise men that were actually not even numbered, how they brought Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Those are the gifts that were traditionally given to kings, right? So it makes sense to us as Christians to have them bring those gifts to Jesus. But with the title that God gave me today, which is entitled The Gift of You, I was like, okay, how does this all come together? God started to talk to me about how we limit things and how sometimes the perspective is that Jesus was broke. He was this lowly, humble person. And not that God isn't humble, that Jesus was not humble when he walked the earth, but that he was somehow lacking in some area, like he was broke. And so I said, Lord, there's a scripture that says that the apostles told this man, like, hey, we silver and gold we have none. He said, yeah, but that was their current circumstance. They didn't have anything in that moment to give to him. But there is no way that they were walking around traveling and not having what they needed, adequate amount in abundance. Because if it was not in abundance, Judas, whose heart was to steal, would not have had anything to steal or take away. And there were times when they said, hey, Jesus, we can't feed these 5,000 people. They were just saying, hey, even if we could get back, he actually said, if we could go to the market, like we'd have to have this to feed all these people. Those were times that was brought up, or that was a situation so that the glory of God could be seen in their lives. Why am I talking about Jesus and then tying that into the gift that is you? Well, there's a gift on the inside of you. God said this to me. He says, so when Jesus came into the earth, he had riches. He already had everything he needed, because as he was being born, these men were finding their way to him. Jesus, I thank you. They were finding their way to him, right? And they were making decisions to not report back to the king where he was, because they knew that this was the Messiah, right? Well, God has already put in you everything you need to be you. He did that before you got here. Before your father knew your mother, and before the decision was made to save your life and not abort you or any of those things, God had already given you everything that you needed that pertains to life and godliness. So if we need money in life, God's already given that to us. If we need salvation of our minds and our bodies to be healed, we have those things. So as we're walking into this Christmas season and we're walking into this new year, right? That old thing ends, something new comes, right? Both of those things have to take place for the other to take place, right? For something to be new, the old has to end. And in order to just be who we're being called to be in this season, our old way of thinking has to end. All of those thoughts that come to you and tell you that you're not enough, that you're not pretty enough, that your hair isn't long enough, that your hair is too short, or maybe your hair is too long and you need to cut it, or maybe it needs to be this color, or maybe your body type isn't this way. And all these different things that we look at and think that we are flawed in, those are the things that God is going to use in the seasons of our lives that he needs to use them, if we recognize that they are assets to us, right? So let's talk about some assets. Let's talk about one asset being our mindset, our perspective, how we choose to view things. And you might think, well, I didn't choose all these things to happen to me in my life, right? I didn't choose to be molested. I didn't choose to be raped. I didn't choose to get divorced. Like, these situations happened in my life. How are they assets to me? Well, my Aunt Ruthie used to say something like, well, you are not the first and you won't be the last. And she would say that if we made a mistake or someone found out we did something that was wrong. She wasn't excusing our actions, but she was saying, hey, dust yourself off if you are not the first and you won't be the last. So what does that mean? So we can make it scriptural. He says that there is no sin that is beset you that is other than what is common to man. But with every temptation, there's a way of escape. He's saying you're not the first person to walk through this. So don't believe the lie. Don't accept the hype that you are walking through something that is just too heavy and too much for you. It is too much for you, but with God's strength, you can do anything. To look at people who've done this before us, because we weren't the first. And when we do that, we're learning things, right? We learn what works, what doesn't work. And maybe something that worked for them isn't going to work for us, but we can take their notes and look at them and figure out what things actually are good and what things aren't. And because we are not the last, then we need to be able to set up and be able to set up some strategies, set up some processes so that the people come behind us, it won't be hard for them. Whether it's a work process, whether it's a process or a strategy or something you set up for your spiritual walk or your life, you're gonna want to be able to be a gift, because God has put gifts inside of you. Sometimes we don't think that the things we walk through, the hard things, can be a gift, but sweetie, it is, because again, we're not the first and we won't be the last that walks through something good or bad. So we have to be able to allow God to use those things in our lives. Revelations 12, I've referenced this several times. It says that they overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. But if we're not giving our testimony, who are we helping to overcome? Because see, I overcame the situation, but if I never talk about it and tell people how God brought me over, they may look at it and think, oh, wow, oh, she went through that, well, and she came out this way. Well, I can't do that because I'm not strong enough. Well, they need to know the nitty gritty details, that there were times that I wanted to give up. There were times I wanted to quit. There were times I got drunk. There were times I did things that were not holy, that God wouldn't smile on, but I can tell them about how God still showed up. He was still present, ever present, comforting me, providing for me, blessing me, and just pulling me back to him, drawing me in with his love. God will come and get you. He will come and get you in the good and the bad times. I mean, what do I mean by that? Well, Mondays for me are my days of prayer. I pray every day, don't get me wrong, but I accept prayer requests on Monday, and so I intercede for others, right? And so this past week, though, God had my sister, my bonus sister, call me and pray for me, pray over me. She said, I need to pray for you. I need to pray with you. May I call you? And she asked that because she knows my schedule. She knows I work, and she always honors the things that God puts in my hands to do, right? So the Lord said, let her call you. I know this is the time that you usually don't take calls, but let her call you. Go ahead and let her call you, because she's going to pray for you. When I say God came for me, that morning when I woke up, I had made some declarations over my life, and God had reminded me of some things that he had spoken over my life that I hadn't even said to anyone. I speak them out loud when I'm making declarations, when I'm praying, when I'm standing in spiritual warfare, standing strong against the enemy. But God allowed her to pray for me, and she covered literally every single thing that I had declared that morning, or that God had spoken to my spirit, that he had reminded me of. God will come for you. He will send others to come and get you, because the gift that's on the inside of you, he is not going to let it go to waste. We get to decide if God actually uses us or not, but he wants to. He really, really wants to. I want to just tell you that as we wrap up this year, it is important that you get your mindset and other things in order. For some people, it can be as simple as just organizing your home office again, like really getting things strategically organized, preparing for the abundance of clients and customers that you're going to have. Get those things in order, because you need to be able to perform and operate in your gifts excellently. Everything should be about excellence. Why? Because he says when we do something, we should do it as if we're working unto the Lord. Everything that we do should be as if we're working unto the Lord. Doesn't matter what it is, be excellent in it, right? So there are some things that God has been pulling on your heart that he's telling you to dust off. I'm here to tell you to dust those things off, because it might seem like you didn't need those things. They weren't useful, but I promise you, in this season, you're going to find that some things you learned, some old things that you wrote off about yourself, are going to be the very things that God uses to bless you and others around you, and to manifest the promises that he's made you in your life. So trust God, dust off the dreams and visions, build that vision board, revamp that vision board, sit with God and say, Lord, okay, you've given me these promises. You've been tugging on my heart. You're saying that you're going to use me in this way. Give me some strategy. I promise you, God will give you heavenly strategies. He's going to give them to you. I want to encourage you to not do like I do sometimes, and you get in a place where you get a little bit anxious because you allow yourself to become overwhelmed in your thoughts. And you may be thinking, she's a coach, she gets overwhelmed in her thoughts. Oh yeah, because sometimes before I could finish one project or do another thing, God has given me another dream and another vision. And sometimes he'll say, sit this one to the side and I'll pick this up. And so you have to be willing to just trust God through it all. He reminded me recently, yes, you're right. It's too much for you. That's why I'm here. So rest in me. So what I decided to do to give myself, honestly some freedom. I decided to do it. It was a challenge in a boot camp that I was in this past week. And the challenge was to resign our position in our businesses. Everyone in the group was an entrepreneur, and it said to resign your position. And at first you think like, okay, who gonna work for me, right? But no, the point is that God is already working for you and wants to work for you. He needs to be CEO of your business, of your ministry, of your life. Surrender your gifts, whatever they are, to God and watch him do great things through you, all for his glory. And he's going to bless you also in the process. There's a gift on the inside of you. The world's been waiting for it. You have gold, frankincense, and myrrh on the inside of you, and it's time for you to be the queens and the king that God has called you to be. Straighten your crown, square your shoulders back, grab the vision, read it again, and run with it. Well, that's been the podcast for this week, The Gift That Is You. And I'll meet you back here next week at the same time, Wednesdays at 6:30 a.m. on all of your favorite music platforms. God bless you and see you then.